Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and today I'd like to talk about the man with a golden touch. And when I say the man with a golden touch, I'm talking essentially about the story of the King Midas, who most of us have heard while we were growing up. And of course, while we were growing up, most of us were given one moral of the story. And the moral was that greed is bad. Greed is a negative trait to have. And maybe to some degree that might be true if it's done mindlessly, if the greed is mindless. So am I then saying that greed is good? Well, I'm neither saying that greed is good, nor am I saying greed is bad. All I'm saying is it exists, and if it exists, it has a purpose. So then just let's take one example of mindlessness. So say we go out for a buffet, or say we go out for a wedding or a reception where there's plentiful, abundant of food served for us, all kinds of food served before us. And at times looking at that abundant spread, we just might get a little over-tempted, a little overexcited, and we fill our plates to the brim. The result of which can go a few ways. First, we may force ourselves to stuff ourselves up, quite naturally feeling really uneasy from the insides. But it is our guilt that is forcing ourselves to stuff ourselves up. Or we may throw the food in the bin, which is also unnecessary waste. Now, some who've gone with their friends and families may ask the other people to share from their platter because they are unable to finish it up. And very rarely, if anyone would at all, ask for the food to be packed for them so that rather than wasting it, they can carry it back home with them, which can be consumed the next time that they are having their meal. And maybe the last option might not be as mindless, but then how many of us would actually choose to do that? And to a great degree, all four were quite mindless choices. So let's understand the nuances, the complexities of this story, rather than looking at it in very linear and lateral ways. Greed is the resultant of our desires, and desires to some degree are also the birthplace of every kind of creative expression, of every kind of imagination, of every kind of creativity. So can there be other kinds of greeds, other kinds of desires as well? Yes, people can have desire to write amazing books. Yes, people can have desire to create mobile phones, to create technology which enhances our living to some degree. Yes, people can have desire to accumulate more knowledge, to enhance their own knowledge, and maybe to even share that knowledge with others. People can have exponential desires, also called as greed, to create organizations, to create infrastructures that give employment to a whole lot of people. So then the first question to look into is every kind of greed or is every kind of desire bad? And maybe that's something we need to think about for our own selves. Yet another aspect that I understood through this story, through a version of this story, was that King Midas, before he became the king, was actually a peasant's son. He was not born in abundance, but was rather born in poverty. So quite likely his early formative years gave him the message that food was never enough, that there was never enough, that there probably will be never enough for one to sustain themselves, for one to just survive. And as a lot of researchers in the field of psychology, in the field of psychiatry, in the field of sociology would tell us today, that it is our early belief systems that gradually form our personality because they have been a part of our personal reality. And with time, these belief systems become more subconscious, maybe even non-conscious to some extent. And this child, as he grew up, was later adopted by the king of that land because the king never had his own heir, the successor to his throne. And as we can only visualize, as we can only assume that this kid who had grown up in poverty when he went into sudden richness, it probably distorted his perception of reality. From probably having a few morsels to eat in the day, he went into an environment wherein there was more than enough, wherein he probably went bonkers looking at the kind of things that were present around him. He probably would have had a difficult time even choosing something for himself. And then, of course, choosing mindfully is yet another ballgame altogether. But when the disparity is so huge, being mindful might become a little difficult. And so gradually with time, he became the king. But quite unfortunately, his belief system that was formed, that was informed, that had informed him during his formative years had not left him, which happens with most of us. And so quite naturally, the thing that he feared most, of not having enough, of not having plentiful, he asked to be blessed with abundance. He asked that he be blessed with a touch wherein whatever he touches turns into gold, which of course he was blessed with. So imagine his thrill when he gets up the next day. And the next day when he starts to touch one thing after the other and everything starts to turn into gold. Imagine the kind of rush he feels. Imagine the kind of excitement he feels, just like a child who gets excited. So metaphorically, it was probably the biggest lottery that any human being could have ever won. And as he keeps touching one thing after the other, he soon realizes that his own touch, his own blessing has turned into a bane, into a curse, wherein now he can't even eat the plentiful of food that is around him because all that has started to turn into gold. He probably even can't drink the water to quench his thirst, which are the basic essentials apart from a few other things for our survival, for our mere survival. And probably he is returned to the same state from where his journey had started. He probably felt more poorer despite having all the riches in the world, despite having everything of gold in his world. And as the story unfolds itself through the lens of the writer, his golden touch just doesn't stop there. He even unfortunately turns his own daughter into a statue of gold. And that is where, as per the story, he actually breaks down, wherein he realizes where his blessing has now turned into a curse. So now let's even look at the aspect of abundance through this story. Even today, many times when we think of abundance, we actually think in terms of only financial riches and wealth. However, if we just pause to reflect a bit, do we also not have abundance of actually almost everything in a consumeristic society that we live in today? Do we not have abundance of information? Do we not have abundance of choice with regards to the foods that we eat? Do we not have abundance of technology? Do we not have abundance with regards to the choice of careers that we have? Do we not have abundance with any kind of a product that we want to have? Do we not have abundance in almost all areas of our lives, at least for most of us? And yet at times we feel that it is out of this plentiful, it is out of this abundance of choices, that most of us are stressed out, that most of us are distressed. For it is the paradox of choice through abundance which demands accountability and responsibility. And as humans, by default, many of us like having choices, but we do not like the consequences of those choices. We do not like the accountability for the choices that we make in our lives. For in some ways, at times, it is a very heavy weight to carry. And at times, it's also the most empowering and liberating thing that we take upon ourselves. So coming to the conclusion of the story, wherein I'd shared the same story with a few other people, in fact a whole lot of people, and I'd asked them to tell me what they would do in case they got such a blessing. And weirdly enough, people in the age group of 35 plus, just like the king said, that they would like the blessing or rather the curse to be taken away. And funnily enough, people in their late teens and early 20s did not say anything, or at least most of them did not say anything. And when I asked them as to why they had not replied to the question, A few of them said that we are thinking, we are not sure, and some even said, if the curse is lifted, even the blessing will be taken away, and we are not sure if we want the blessing to be taken away. And in my understanding, those were more thoughtful responses rather than immediate reactions, wherein people had wanted the curse to be lifted away without realizing that even the blessing then would be taken away. And so when the same question was thrown back at me, I had to think a bit, and my response was that I would not want the blessing to be taken away, but I would want it to be replaced with something else. I would want the same person to bless me, to help me understand, to help me discern when my blessing would turn into a curse, would start turning into a curse, to then be able to process it, to make a more informed decision, to make a more informed choice, and probably to even help me understand when my seeming curse can turn into a blessing. And if I were to put it in Hindi language, I would say, bless me जहाँ पे सिर्फ सोच के डिसीजन नहीं लूँ, bless me कि मैं सोच के समझ के डिसीजन लूँ. And समझदारी, or rather wisdom, comes with the ability to discern things. Unfortunately or unfortunately, it almost never happens till we start to slow down a bit once in a while. Let's try and think about the blessings that we perceive as curse, or the curses that may actually be blessings in disguise. Let's try and reflect on that a bit, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contextual content of these videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.